Pardon the delay this morning. We had some issues. Again, I don't know what's going on this morning. It's not connecting quickly. I don't understand. It's crashing and I have to reconnect. That's okay. You're not here to listen to boring technical details, right? They suck. Ben, good day, Bitcoin fam. Robert is first today with a good morning. Love, coffee, sun, LFG. CK in the house. CK, it was a great time on FedWatch yesterday. I enjoyed it a great deal. Good day, Bitcoiners. Indeed, Catacombs. Nice to see you. Daniel, great to see you, my man. I'm heading to Vermont today. Miss it. Shouldn't have been gone this long, but blah, blah, blah. Had to take care of some stuff in Montreal, and you know the deal. Zombie dollar. Yeah, it's a pretty... I could not get it to make a brain. It just kept making a skull. So whatever. We'll live, right? We shall live. Hold on, let me just reorient this so I can see the chat as it comes in. Tommy, good morning, friends. Indeed, good morning. The White House chefs didn't all kill themselves. I think they're still eating in DC. I was going to say the Hill, but that's the other side of it, of course. Bon matin tous. We have from Where Do I Sats. Looks like Gary. I had one that looked a lot like Joe Biden, believe it or not. They were giving me really weird shaped skulls as well. So there you go. There were a couple weird ones today, right? Maybe someday I'll publish some of the B-roll. Some of the B-roll ones are crazy. B-roll images, right? Dan, good morning, sir. We got a Kevin in the house. We got a P-Man Van, and we got plenty of other people, but we're going to have to abridge it slightly because we need a confirmation. We got a sun up. We got a Bitcoin running. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee. I got to sneak it through all these wires and everything, and then we can talk about what's new. I forgot to put my blinds up in the room, so it's a little more shadowy here than normal, but that's okay. That's okay. We didn't have a great sleep last night, by the way. We were great sleepers, amazing sleepers. Don't know what's up. We had a little bit of trouble last night falling asleep, but it was fine. It was fine. We still got some sleep. All right, here we go. Everyone ready for some Moscow time? Right, we've got a good supply of Moscow time today. This is a user inputted, user shared Moscow time. Green fingers. It's for all of you gardeners out there. Careful if you're gardening right now. If you're listening to this while gardening, be very, very careful. Urgent warning. It's urgent warning to gardeners as soil increases the risk of killer heart disease. It's okay. There's a lot of heart disease, so you got to find out where it's coming from. Apparently, it's the soil. So be careful. Any of you out there, be careful. As you know, Chicago is dealing with a lot of violence, right? There's a lot of guns and weapons and trouble going on and some murders. And the mayor said, he was asked about it. And he says, I really don't appreciate that the reporter is using the word mob, please. He says he should call them large gatherings. Okay, so in case you're wondering, in case there's a mob out there with guns, no, they're just large gatherings of violent people, just not mobs. Come on. Dianne Feinstein, right? The senator, she is as out of it, or some people say way more out of it than cocaine Mitch McConnell, the Republican. Both of them look like they really need a break. They got to go chill out somewhere, right? These old people. And it looks like Dianne Feinstein is going to take a bit of a break. She's ceding power of attorney to her daughter because she's 90 years old. So her daughter can now sign everything for her and do all the kinds of things in her stead. But except one, she's not allowed to do one thing. And Dianne Feinstein is still going to do that, right? So she's not smart enough to manage her own affairs. But according to the New York Post, Dianne Feinstein, 990, cedes power of attorney to daughter, but still serves in Congress. And this was the lady last week that was reading all the reasons for which they didn't want to audit spending in Ukraine. No. So she actually came out. She lost the ability to be a cognizant person this week. You cannot make a contract with her. It's not legal. It's not legally binding. She can't have any discretion. It's been taken away from her because of her mental state. And last week she was talking about how no, you don't need to investigate the spending in the Ukraine war. No. And she didn't remember which way to vote, so her aides had to tell her, just say yes. They stopped her from giving a speech and they said, just vote yes, right? So it looks like now her daughter is going to take over most of her affairs, but don't worry, she can still vote on things in Ukraine, and she can make sure you never know where the money's being spent in Ukraine, right? So she's still got that ability. Washington Post here telling us that now, as you know, on this show, we are very LGBTQ plus positive. We are, right? We don't like the kids stuff. Absolutely. That should be a crime, right? We agree with that. But we don't give a shit what people do with their lives, right? But we will say that it isn't that same way over the world, and we respect that too, right? I don't go to the Middle East saying you guys all got to be gay, right? Like, I'm not that LGBTQ plus positive, right? I have no problem with the Middle East and what they think is the right way to live. But the Washington Post thinks that there's a bit of a problem. Here's their headline. LGBTQ plus communities in the Middle East faced a growing crackdown, mirroring efforts by American conservatives to restrict the rights of gay and transgender people. So in case you were wondering, all the stuff in the Middle East that's against the gay people, it's actually from America. Right, it's from America. It's the conservatives that have told it's not Muhammad, nothing to do. Don't look. It's not Islam. Nope. It's American conservatives. They're really leading the Muslims into this world, right? So we got a few more. Right. This is maybe a hint of where things are headed. We get this from The Atlantic. An unsettling hint at how much fraud could exist in science. That's a headline today. An unsettling hint. Is there some fraud in science? Is science not perfect? All right, we'll see. And here is my favorite one of the day, and this will lead into our theme: fragile systems make fragile minds. This is from The Atlantic, and it's pretty good, right? They have a whole article on it, how Bronze Age pervert charmed the far right. And the tweet that came with it, an internet personality who goes by Bronze Age pervert has become a leading cultural figure on the far right, with fans on Capitol Hill and even in the Secret Service. But this report is on how a fascist bodybuilder came to threaten American liberalism. Fascist bodybuilder came to threaten American liberalism. Oh, by the way, that's another good Barbie note. We were talking a bit about Barbie yesterday. In Barbie, they way overuse the word fascist at the beginning of the movie in like histrionics, and they make it exactly as ridiculous as it sounds. Like, you're a fascist. Barbie gets called a fascist. It's excellent. All right, so let's think just for a second about what this Atlantic article says at the very end, right? And this is what I want to pick up on. This idea that how a fascist bodybuilder, right? A fascist bodybuilder came to threaten American liberalism. Well, how could it be that that it's the defining course of our society? American liberalism, they got the White House, they got Congress, they got all kinds of stuff, right? They got the media. So what's going on? They got all kinds of stuff going real well for them. And yet a fascist bodybuilder, an anon on Twitter, is able to affect them, right? And there's a sort of a weird coincidence here. Oh shit, I have one more Moscow time. I'll get to it. I have one more. I forgot there was one of the greatest Moscow times ever today. But here's the thing though, they actually came, I read a little bit of the article and people have been talking about this article, and one of the people in there said that this is actually what they came up with, right? This is the actual problem they came up with, that this guy, Bronze Age pervert, chose a not so great example, in that he was more into what did they say, Achilles, but not as into Ulysses as he should have been, right? So the actual criticism here, but a subtler and greater model of manhood is Ulysses. And that's not the one they're interested in. They're interested in Achilles. And so here's Loki Julanius saying, I know the solution to stopping the spread of Bronze Age ideas. Let's pretend there was a liberal opposition during the fucking Trojan War and try to shoehorn even more current year ideas into literary classics. So here they're trying to say that this some weird thing about the politics of ancient Greece being involved in what's going on here. But anyway, the point of me mentioning all of this is to underline that the fragility that they're alluding to here, that the entire edifice of liberalism can fall because there's one irreverent bodybuilder who doesn't kiss the ring or bend the knee and just makes fun of them, literally just mocks them all day. He's a huge account because he mocks these people all day long. And through the act of his mocking, the Atlantic is admitting what I think we all see, that laughing at these people can destabilize the whole system. And so we see this put in words and very clearly the Atlantic admitting, I think, the truth that the system is absolutely threatened by these little individual acts and these individual characters and these really theatrical presentations, because Bronze Age pervert, of course, has some reality to it, but at the same time, it is what a lot of people are sort of revolving around now. It's kind of a new archetype, let's say, the bro science guy who just uses his basic observations to make scientific calculations, doesn't need a bunch of labs, doesn't need a bunch of science, right? Science, right? Like the Atlantic already admitted, right? How corrupted and fraudulent it's become. So this idea here that the system itself is that fragile, I think is a lot of what we're talking about here in the mornings, right? And to see it come out in the Atlantic like this, I think is confirmation that we're sort of on the right track. And I'll show you today what that means. So, I've often done those whiteboards where we compare, the pyramid, the inverted pyramid. It's sort of like the basic whiteboard of the show. I've done it several times. I did it on the Robert Breedlove show before. I've done it on the intro to the show. I've written an article in Bitcoin Magazine about this frame, right? The two pyramids. So in one version, you have the top-down pyramid structure where the dollar and the all-seeing eye are on top, and of course the people on the bottom of the pyramid, the very recognizable system that we've seen for a long time now, credentialism and all of these things baked in. And then the inverted pyramid, of course, with money on the bottom, and then that being the foundation for the proliferation of human minds and human consciousness. So an inverted pyramid where one sort of pushes the human mind down to the bottom and rests on it, right? The belief systems are what actually gives meaning to that money, versus the money and the system itself giving direction to human creativity. So it's a completely inverted system, right? And part of what I think, anyway, an easy way for me to understand that is the old mind on your money, money on your mind. The very common lyric you hear in many, many songs from the 90s. But you can actually, break it down, the logistics of it, right? If money is on your mind, it can kind of weigh it down, right? But if your mind is on money, right, it can kind of be lifted up by it. And that's what that pyramid sort of alludes to. There's the directional truth to it, right? So you can either have the money weighing you down, or you can have the money helping propel you upwards, right? So it's not an important lesson or anything like that. It's really just a directional frame. It's really just to see and contrast the differences. But again, when you have fragile systems, and I do believe this pyramid top-down structure is a fragile system, and it becomes as fragile it is just because of the entropic systems, the entropy that has been in the entire fiat system now for 80 plus years, almost 100 years, depending on when you mark its true beginning, right? So the tension that we have here between an entropic system that isn't really balanced anymore, that is showing tons of signs of wear and decay, and an inability, really a fragility that I think is one of the main reasons why so many people are enthusiastic about Bitcoin. There's just so little faith that this system can propagate forward. We talk about it all the time here, that if you're a real fiat sort of mindset person, you can't actually these days imagine a better future. It's almost impossible to imagine a future that everyone can get on board with if your organizing principle is the US dollar. Right now, I still think the US dollar has a role to play going forward, but it is not the one that it has played until now, and that world is over. And we're going to talk a little bit today about how we can sort of confirm it's over, right? We have enough idiots in charge and enough people who, if the US dollar is to propagate, if the system that we have here is to propagate, moving aside raw brute force for a second, because that probably is all that's left in order to preserve this US dollar system. Let's just look at some of the characters and participants that need to be relied on for this system to keep going forward, right? And you'll see just how fragile it really is, right? And the opposite of that, of course, Bitcoin being anti-fragile, and I talk about it regularly here, right? One of the main differences is the top-down fiat system really does create NPCs. It creates non-playable characters. And at different points, some of these people are a little more active, right? A non-playable character can still be a viable enemy in a video game. It can still be a viable a character with all kinds of unique abilities and special forces and special tricks and characteristics, like a boss in any video game, right? These things all exist. But the actual capacity of them to keep going forward, to keep respawning, to keep reiterating isn't there, because once these characters are broken, they can't come back, right? They go back to just selling you swords and Zelda. They're incapable of, coming back in the game and playing again. Some can sort of survive in a broken form, but they're not really in the game. Versus Bitcoiners who continually stay in the game. They don't get sideswiped. They don't get knocked out. The only time you ever stop hearing from Bitcoiners is because they pull a Galt's Gulch and they disappear because they're too successful and they don't want to participate in the fucking clown world anymore, right? So that's about the only way you lose Bitcoiners, is because there's an apotheosis when you ascend out of the system, right? The apotheosis. So here's just a little hint of where we're headed, right? Look at this Bill Barr character, right? Bill Barr was on CNN, and he's the Republican who's turning tail on Trump, right? He's the one who's telling the Republicans the truth. Trump is an insurrectionist, right? And what's his evidence? Do you know what his evidence is? Well, if you didn't know, Bill Barr is an amazing mind reader. He's a mind reader. He can read minds, right? The CNN headline where he is talking about why Trump is going to jail for his insurrection, he says Barr obliterates Trump's defense. He knew well that he had lost the election. He knew that he had lost the election? Whoa, stop, Bill. You have insight into Donald Trump's brain? Holy shit. That's amazing, right? He knew what he was thinking. And of course, we know Trump's defense for the whole January 6th thing is, that's what I believed. I believed the election was stolen and I was telling people the truth. And it is all about Trump's state of mind, right? It has to be about Trump's state of mind, because if he believed the election was stolen, then he wasn't lying and he's not guilty of any of this stuff. So it really all comes down to whether or not Bill Barr can read Trump's mind. Now, here's some things on Bill Barr that you might not know, and some things I've mentioned before from time to time. First of all, I want to read something from the New York Times, because I'm going to tie Bill Barr into, these are the guys they're hooking their wagon to, all right? These are the fucking people that the fiat system, that the Democrats, that Joe Biden, and it's not just them. This is proof of uniparty, right? This is proof of people trying to preserve a system that doesn't work for Americans, but that works for the credentialed elite folks. So this is what happened yesterday. And the New York Times actually wrote this. This is for SBF, because of course SBF is clean, right? Clean. I'm going to tie Bill Barr in a second to SBF, because it's actually amazing. And one day I think we're going to know more about it. And I knew something was up in 2020 when I first saw this, right? So now the New York Times actually submitted a letter to the court in favor of SBF 2 days ago. Right? They did that. The New York Times did this. So this is Zuck Guzman talking about what happened. He says, I don't think I've ever seen this before. The New York Times just submitted a letter to the court in Sam Bankman-Fried's case about why he was fined to share Carolyn Ellison's diary entries with them, and why the judge shouldn't revoke bail and detain him now. While the current round of motion practice was prompted by a Times article about Carolyn Ellison, and the government argues that the article was part of the defendant's effort to interfere with the trial, that overlooks the public's legitimate interest, independent of this prosecution, in Miss Ellison and her activities at her cryptocurrency trading firm. Now, look, I don't know the details of this stuff and what's wrong with it, but here's what you got to know about Bill Barr, and here's what you got to know about the people that are still about to exit the game and why these fragile brains can't be relied on to win for them. So here's what you didn't know. Bill Barr, in the days just before the 2020 election, did something that American DOJ has never done. So he was running the DOJ at the time. And what he did was he went to Hong Kong and he arrested Arthur Hayes, the CEO of BitMEX, right? And what was the problem with Arthur Hayes? Well, the problem with Arthur Hayes was he was running the 100x leverage casino in a legal jurisdiction where what he was doing was totally legal. Hong Kong is totally legal. And what Bill Barr ended up doing was saying, oh, it's because he knew, so he was doing his mind reading thing again. Arthur Hayes knew that American users know how to use VPNs, and he was counting on it. So he really was advertising to American people and American users, because of course BitMEX was founded in America, I think, but I don't know if it was founded in America. I take that back. I think it was always founded in Hong Kong, but it stopped providing services to Americans the minute Ben Lawsky and the Bit license came out in 2015. Now, this was something I was involved in. I was very anti-Bit license. I met with Ben Lawsky in 2014. I've railed against Ben Lawsky for years. I invited Ben Lawsky to many, many events. He only came one time before we really tried to smash him in the face with his ridiculous arguments. He's out there with the Ripple folks now, by the way. He cashed in immediately. What a scumbag. So Ben Lawsky was the reason why Kraken and Shapeshift at the time and BitMEX stopped using stopped promoting to American users, or in some cases just New York State users. So Kraken stayed in America but didn't bother with the New York State stuff. So here's what happened. The machine that BitMEX built, the 100x casino leverage machine, which was always a gambling machine. Everyone knew it was a gambling machine. If it was never designed as a Bitcoin investment machine, it was a way to get more Bitcoin by gambling, right? And everyone knew that. That's the reason why it was built in Hong Kong. It was there for people who don't want Wall Street porno. They don't want pornography. It's for people who wanted to fuck for real, right? They wanted to risk things for real. They wanted to make money or lose money or do whatever, but it was what everyone knew it was. Arthur never hid what it was. Arthur was very honest with what it was. It was for degenerate cowboy traders that wanted to fuck, right? Pardon the swearing, everyone, if kids are listening. I don't mean to swear without warning. But when I talk about Wall Street, the Wall Street crassness always comes out, right? Wall Street's a very crass place. So that's what happened. Now, I first met or spoke with SBF in the summer of 2018. Why? Because I was looking for speakers for an event I was producing in Singapore for CoinDesk. And I noticed the leaderboard on BitMEX, and I saw Alameda Research. And I said, who the fuck are these guys, right? And I started reaching out to them. I said, you guys want to come? Like, what's going on here? The other one was the Three Arrows Capital. Suju did come. So I did meet Suju on that trip. He did come as a speaker on that one. Because they were the two leaders, right, of this board. And it was just for traders. It was literally just tell us what your book is, tell us what you do. You got 10 minutes to tell people about trading and what you do and blah, 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 show off a bit. SBF didn't make it. Suju did. But here's the thing. When I first started working with Kraken, one of my jobs was to sort of market size the upstart FTX that came out of Alameda Research. And the reason I sort of volunteered to do that was because I was the only one who knew these people were, because of this little thing that I had, knowing that they traded on the BitMEX forum. But here's the scam part. Right? The moment Arthur was arrested, I was at that moment market sizing and researching and doing investigating, let's say, or FTX, right? The upstart FTX. And I said, well, if they're going to arrest Arthur, right? Did you know what FTX actually started with? They started with the 101x leverage casino machine, the exact copy of BitMEX, the exact copy of BitMEX. It was the same thing, except you could leverage one more time, 101x. So the largest players on the BitMEX platform realized that the real game was in providing dark liquidity for exchanges, right? Because don't ever think of crypto exchanges as exchanges purely. Kraken is, Coinbase is. We're going to talk a bit about Coinbase today. A few others are actual exchanges. The rest of them are just dark pools of capital, right? Just dark pools of capital. And BitMEX was a kind of dark pool of capital. And of course, you know, it was of course used for whatever you want to, imagine. But that was fine and legal based on where they were. What was different was America did an extraterritorial enforcement action. This was brand new. They didn't normally go to other places where they had no jurisdiction in markets and say, actually, we have jurisdiction here, we can do this. So Arthur's arrest was completely unprecedented. And what I never understood about it at the time, well, I did understand, and I think I still understand, was that SBF, of course, had the same product. And what happened to SBF? Nothing. Obviously nothing, right? They arrested it. So I got in touch with Arthur already last summer before SBF was destroyed and said, this can't continue. Like, now that you're legally allowed to come out into the world again, we got to start talking about this. Now, he's been out in the world talking about other stuff. It's not up for me to tell him to talk about politics and go settle scores with SBF and all that. But that was the reason why I concocted the Michael Lewis and Arthur Hayes discussion at Bitcoin 2023 in Amsterdam, because I wanted to see that contrast and see if I can get anything out of it. It didn't really go exactly like that, but I still thought it was a great conversation. But the point is, I knew that the Bill Barr administration of the Department of Justice was corrupt from that moment, because I knew what SBF was. I knew the donations he was giving to politics, and I was one of the only people in the world who really clued in on why that was important at the time, right? I knew before it became public. I knew in the lead up to the 2020 election, and I knew what he was doing at that time. And when I saw Bill Barr do this, I said, wait a minute, we are in big trouble here. If Trump can't control the DOJ, and I just didn't imagine that what is Trump going to do with Arthur fucking Hayes, right? Well, nothing. Like, it's not important, right? So in my mind, you already saw the uniparty rallying, circling wagons, and moving against Trump, and moving in a way that would help Biden already at the time. So, of course, Bill Barr, now he's a mind reader on the news. He knows that Trump knew. So what he's actually saying is this: Trump knew he lost the election and was lying, because that's what has to happen for them to prove that Trump was a riot inciter, right? He has to believe he lost and then went against that. If he believed he won and was fighting against an injustice, the whole thing is different. The whole case falls apart, right? He has to know he lost. So their whole thing is that Trump, right, knew he lost to Joe Biden, and all of this is just his cope. That's the case. Right? That's the case. And Bill Barr is out there saying, and I know the case is clear because I know that Trump knew he lost. Imagine, he's a mind reader. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? So there's one off the board, right? Just, you can right away say the uniparty, and he didn't move the needle. No one believes Bill Barr anymore. He's got to go on CNN, right? So this ain't going to work. No one's watching it. No one cares. Probably only people talking about Bill Barr's mind reading ability this morning is us, right? Now, of course, there's NPCs out there who are, oh, Bill Barr, he got a Republican who said that Trump is a criminal. It must be true. It's someone from his own side. Well, we've known for a long time he ain't on anyone's side, right? We don't know what he's doing. It's not eating well, it's not that. He's not doing that, right? He's just sitting there on CNN going on about his mind reading abilities. That's it, right? So take them off the board. Of course, we know we can take the New York Times off the board. And remember, the system is so fragile that it actually needs these people to be successful. If they're not successful, the whole thing starts to come down in weird ways, right? But there's more. We're not done, right? We're not done. It's not just them. Now you get, I think anyway, the CBS News woman, Catherine Herridge, right? Now, she's the one who already months ago, we covered it here. She was the first mainstream news person to confirm the Hunter Biden laptop was real. And that would have been back in January or something like that, or February. She did that a long time, but we covered her. We got a lot of respect for her, right? And now she's out there saying today the truth about what happened with that Goldman guy. Remember I was telling you about the Goldman lying guy, right? The guy who looked like you could just tell he was lying when he came out of the closed door Devon Archer thing on Monday. Remember I told you on Monday morning before anyone was talking about Devon Archer, it was going to change the whole story. And of course it has now. So on Monday morning, when all that was going on, he testified in a closed room setting and then immediately went on Tucker Carlson that night to clean up the story, let's say. But so he went he went into the closed door meeting. Rep Goldman came out and said, no, it was the illusion of access, right? Well, Catherine Herridge here now is reporting that that was a lie, right? That Rep Goldman was lying. So what she says here is when you look at the transcript, you see what you see is the phrase illusion of access is in Dan Goldman's question, right? It's in Dan Goldman's question. It's actually not what Devon Archer testified to. He never said illusion of access. We had 4 news stories written immediately about illusion of access. In the headline, you had Axios, Hunter Biden associate describes illusion of access. You've got, CNN Politics, former business partner says Hunter Biden sold illusion of access to Joe Biden. Time Magazine, Hunter Biden sold illusion of access to his father, a former associate testifies. And Reuters, finally, Hunter Biden associate described illusion of access to Joe, Democrat lawyer says. So, our lawmaker says. So right away, you can see how the machine works, how information laundering works, how they need mind readers. They need people to generate and create false headlines by using closed door testimony and things like that, right? So all of that said, that it doesn't look like anyone is going to buy the news stuff anymore, right? It's just none of this stuff is going to hit. And when you get even CBS, even a journalist at CBS saying, nope, not buying it. Now, from there, now you need, if it's not going to be the media, right? If it's not going to be Bill Barr and other Mike Pence types, right, that are working for this uniparty situation that clearly are showing that their donors do what Goldman did here to the press, right? Feed them talking points through information laundering and money laundering systems and political donations, right? So if it isn't the media that's going to save them, if it isn't uniparty politicians crossing the lines to give the semblance of being nonpartisan and credible, right? None of them come across as credible. If it's not them, then it's got to be some politicians. Joe Biden is off the field, right? He's not able to participate. And now you had Joe Rogan, who looks totally engaged. So Joe Rogan had Patrick Bet-David yesterday on the show. Patrick Bet-David has been getting all of these Democrats to come on the show lately. He's had Chris Cuomo. He's had Anthony Weiner. He's getting these guys on his show and he keeps mixing it up with them and he's doing great, right? He's having these great mix-up sessions and fighting and cursing and all this stuff. And they talked about a lot of stuff on the Joe Rogan show yesterday. They had a great couple of talks. And here's Joe Rogan, who I think now is no longer under any illusions either. I think he's right in his wheelhouse. He's dealing with the things he sort of subtly believed was true for a long time and is now being confirmed by the world he sees in front of him, right? So whatever he thought was entertainment as far as embracing different conspiracy theories and he now knows is sort of his life's mission. It looks like anyway. It looks like he's getting super engaged. And here's what he said. These are the people that are going to have to come and save the Democrat Party. And this is what he has to say about them, right? Because if it's not them, it's got to be some other charismatic Justin Trudeau type, right? Because there's no other way. If it's not the media, if they can't manufacture any more celebrities, they have to produce one that can actually persuade, that can actually lead people and persuade them. So Joe Rogan says, says there is little desire for, and this is him sort of predicting what they could do to fight this, right? Because like I said, Joe Biden is off the table. Joe Rogan says there is little desire for a President Kamala Harris, and he slams Gavin Newsom as a fucking con man and a cardboard cutout who tried to mandate unnecessary mRNA vaccines for children and got caught disobeying his own COVID-19 orders. That guy's a fucking con man. Everything he did in California, from trying to mandate unnecessary vaccines for kids to being caught in public without a mask and lying about the fact that he was outdoors, nobody believes in that guy. He's just a politician, just a stone cold, narrative driven politician. That's the end of Gavin Newsom. It's over. He's done. That's a kill shot. It's decapitation. He decapitated him on right there on the podcast. Just decapitated him. Just took his head off, like those old videos when people used to get caught in the Middle East and they'd pull the thing off their head and sometimes they'd have to saw it off because it was messy. You know, that's what he just did. Gavin Newsom ain't going to be a playable character in this game. Gavin Newsom is now just like Bill Barr. He's just another smiley, non-playable character. Don't have to pay attention to him. Joe goes into Joe Biden as well. He says Joe Biden is a fucking goof his entire career. He's been caught lying so many times. He's so full of shit, right? There's so much evidence that he is corrupt, just undeniable evidence of corruption. The stuff with him and his son. The guy, Devin Archer, who just testified that was Hunter Biden's business partner, talked about how all the different things that Joe was involved with. It's fucking undeniable. And the fact that mainstream news is ignoring this, except for right-wing media, is fucking crazy, right? So the Newsom thing, you know, on the election fraud one, he also had some stuff to say. He says, how much election fraud do you think is real? I think we could all agree it's not zero, right? And we know these voting machines can be fucked with. We know there are some irregularities. That Kerry Lake stuff in Arizona. Remember what I said about Kerry Lake while it was going on? I said the best possible outcome is for that Katie Hobbs woman to steal the election from Kerry Lake because it's so unbelievable that she could win. It's unbelievable that the woman, remember the story. Kerry Lake was running the election, right? She was the attorney general in charge of election integrity. And she's like, no one cheated. No. I won fair and square. I beat Kerry Lake fair and square. Meanwhile, Kerry Lake is probably the most talented campaigner. I mean, she's up there with Vivek. She's up there with RFK. She's up there with Trump. This is a next level communicator, right? Just an incredibly persuasive person, way beyond anything Gavin Newsom or the laughy vice president can offer, right? Wait, not even in the same ballpark. So Joe Rogan's saying that here, right? We know there are some irregularities. That Kerry Lake stuff in Arizona that they're trying to dismiss, it looks like there's real fraud there. But at the very least, they were voting machines that weren't working properly. And it seems very suspicious that a lot of them were in Republican areas. I think there are coordinated efforts to make sure certain people get elected. I don't know how far they go, but I know it's not zero, right? And then here's the good part, right? So it's not just that he's saying that no new politicians are going to come up from the Democrat side that could be worth a damn because they're all sort of getting ignored. It's not going to be Newsom, and it's not going to be any of these people. What he does go on to say, though, is that folks like Vivek, of course, and of course our favorite Bobby Kennedy Jr. are having the best political campaigns because they're doing exactly what the times demand, not using these untrustworthy media sources. Exactly as RFK said from the very start, podcasting is the path to victory in 2024. And Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David. Now, of course, they have an incentive to see the world this way. They're both huge podcast hosts, right? But here's what they say. They discuss the success of RFK and Vivek's campaigns, attributing it to podcasts, replacing the influence of corporate news, and speculate on Tucker Carlson's potential to win the presidency in 2028. You need to be able to expand. This is PBD talking, Patrick Bet-David. You need to be able to expand for hours and not be interrupted by commercial breaks. They are hampered by that model and the fact that you don't get unique individual voices and perspectives. You get narrative-driven, policy-driven, ideologically driven hosts who are contained by whatever system they are a part of. They are contained by their executives, the producers, and the people behind the scenes. And they go on to talk about Tucker being different. And they go on to talk about Tucker being different and also mentioning the Tucker Carlson article or the piece that was never released from just before his last days in Fox, which was an interview with the Capitol Police, where the Capitol Police say very clearly that they were, what's the actual quote? I don't want to get this one screwed up. Anyway, there was some shenanigans. This article never came out, and it's, damning, let's say, for um, um, both Fox and the Fox and the folks who think, who believe this stuff. So hold on, I'm just trying to look at my notes here. I thought I had it. All right. Anyway, so it's not going to be new politicians. It's not going to be the mainstream media. There is way more traction in these independent media channels, platforms, all that kind of stuff. And now, there are platforms though that are captive. So where do they go there, right? Where do they go there? Well, you get the Facebook files now gathering steam, right? So Facebook, not like Twitter, Facebook did all of the deeds that the cabal of people in DC wanted done, right? They stopped the misinformation science. They stopped the election doubters, right? They canceled all those people. They pushed them away. But now it looks like Congress is going to get more stuff on the Facebook files, and we'll see what it all means, right? But that's not why Facebook is going to be off the field. Not even close. Right. The real reason why Facebook isn't going to be able to meddle in the next election is because Zuckerberg's going to get divorced, which is what I predicted a little while ago. Remember the Threads thing, right? Remember what I said, what Threads was all about? Threads was all about work coming home for Zuckerberg, right? His wife is heavily involved in politics, and his wife was hearing from everyone. I'm mind reading here. We're entering the mind reading zone a little bit, right? I'm speculating and mind reading, right? It's not exactly mind reading. I'm doing some speculation, but hear me out. So Zuckerberg, hearing from his wife, all of her friends, they want, Elon, you got to stand up to Elon, right? We got to have our own place to talk about liberal shit, right? And not have to hear about all these inconvenient things and they're terrible, right? So I believe Threads was Zuckerberg saying to his wife, okay, honey, okay, I'll help you in your politics thing, right? But now the problem is Zuckerberg can't go home, right? When he goes home, his wife's going to be like, well, how's Threads, honey? He's like, I run Facebook. That was a product and it's not going so well, right? So I predicted as that product fails, the marriage will fail. And he basically never posts now, but he did post yesterday, right? And let me show you the post. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. And I think, it was an off the cuff, sort of out of the dark prediction that I made, but I think it's going to come true. And this is what it looks like. So he did a screenshot yesterday of his WhatsApp message with his wife, right? And he says to her, did you see the octagon I put in the backyard? And she says, yes, I saw it. He says, it looks awesome. Mark, she writes in one text, we have plenty of yard space, he says. I have been working on that grass for 2 years. Yeah, okay, honey. Threads is going great. Don't worry. Threads is a big success. Everybody's using it. We're gonna win. No, we're gonna win. We're gonna win. So look, I don't know if they're gonna get divorced, but Threads ain't gonna be a big issue. Obviously, Threads is dead already. And I don't think Facebook is filled with NPCs. Right? Who cares what they think? It just doesn't matter, right? They don't even know in which direction the game is. They don't even, like, in Mario, there's like the old one, there's like gameplay direction and it forces you along a trajectory, right? They don't even know what direction the game is in. They don't know this way, that way, up, down. They don't know. They don't have any idea. And that's why they're in this trouble, by the way. They never knew where the line was, right? They didn't understand where the line was with Trump. And because they didn't really understand where the line was, they went way over it. And that's why we're dealing with this stuff, right? They went way over the line, right? Way over. Now look, so let's look at the power levels, right, of the Uniparty, Mike Pence, Bill Barr, way down. The power levels of mainstream media, according to Patrick Bet-David and Joe Rogan, they're not going to persuade anyone anymore on those platforms. And even people on CBS like Catherine Hedridge are saying, this is a really big scam. This is not like, oh, I caught a little thing. This is the biggest story ever in the Republic. And of course, there is no politician coming to save these people. No one's coming. Nobody, right? It's force or nothing at this point. It's force or nothing. The force could happen, right? But how does it happen? Well, look at the people. In order for the force to happen, they're going to have to kill a lot of people, right? They're going to have to destroy many people in the United States, including congressmen and rich people and all that. And who are these people, right? Look at Thomas Massey, right? Thomas Massey yesterday, the fake news tried to be like, oh, did you know Thomas Massey was lobbying for pardons with Trump in the last days of office, trying to make a fake news story about that, right? And what does Thomas Massey say, right? There's a story. Rep. Thomas Massey admits he requested 2 pardons for Trump. He admits it. He admitted it, right? Well, what were the ones he asked for? It's true, he says. I requested 2 pardons from Trump. One was for Assange and one was for Snowden. I also requested a commutation for Ross Ulbricht. You know, they don't know what game they're playing. They don't even know the game. Massey gets the game. Massey understands what's going on, right? What else did he tweet yesterday? Here's what else he tweeted yesterday. And this, I think, should warm the hearts of every American, because in the end, right, the Bronze Age pervert exercise stuff, really important, probably the most important. But the second most important thing before we start even getting to money and all that stuff is what you're eating, your health, right? Thomas Massey comes out. U.S. government and American oligarchs and corporations want to control your speech, your right to self-defense, and your healthcare. But the crown jewel for them is to control what you eat. And he says that's why the Prime Act and other food freedom initiatives are my top priorities. The Prime Act would make the entire U.S. system look more like what I have in Vermont, which is in Vermont, we don't have to go to no federal inspection for our beef. I can go right to the farm and buy it direct without any inspector. I just look around and does the farm stink? How do the animals look? And then I buy the steak. Let me check out those chickens, and then I buy the eggs, right? Or I buy the actual meat birds, depending on which farm it is. But they don't have to go to any inspectors. They don't have inspectors, right? It's farm to table. Now, if you go to a grocery store, that stuff has to get inspected. But the farmers have the right to sell direct. I can get the raw milk direct. I can get anything I want in Vermont direct from farmers. And because the farms are so small, they were never taken over by Smithfield and Chinese conglomerates and Wall Street money, and none of that ever happened, right? It's just that the farms aren't fertile and good enough, so we get to have great food still in Vermont. It's one of the only places in America, but that system is going to spread throughout America. So if you get the exercise right and you get the food right, and most Bitcoiners are heavily focused on these things, and I don't think everyone's perfect, but these are priorities to Bitcoiners, absolutely priorities. That's why we're playable characters. That's why we're still in the game at the levels we're at. That's why the concentration of us, we keep growing, they keep shrinking, and our overall proportion in the whole mind space is so much greater than it ever has been because of things like this. We exercise. You know, I lift weights every day. I don't go crazy, right? At 15, 20 minutes. I'm not trying to bulk up. I'm just trying to stay in shape, and I've been healthy and active my whole life. I eat really well, right? That's something that COVID helped me focus on. I knew the reality of eating well, but I really stuck to it with COVID and made much better habits because I couldn't get access to the junk that I used to eat all the time. So there you go, right? So we've got important Congress people, important leaders. We've got important acts of people who really understand what is important to be fought over. Like, how many people on their side of the equation, how many Bill Bars out there saying we got to, in order to win long term, we got to make sure that our people are eating well and are healthy. Right? He doesn't know what game they're playing. He doesn't even know what's going on. Right? Bill Barr left his thing yesterday where he mind read Trump, right, and went and just shoved a big, disgusting, deep fried in seed oil, fried banana into his mouth, right? That's what he did. Look at him, right? Now, I'm not a fat shamer. We never fat shame around here, right? We're not into fat shaming. I have nothing but sympathy for everyone who struggles with that. It's real. Eating, the addictions, all of that, the dopamine that comes with only certain levels of sugar for certain people, certain levels of the satiation that we all get from food, not everyone gets in the same proportion, right? So I get it. I've seen people struggle. So not trying to laugh, right? but Bill Barr is not aware of the game, and it's evident when you look at him. It's evident, right? He doesn't know what's being played. So, these are big things, right? Now, if it's not just things like who's coming to play, the politicians on either side of this fight, different quality of people. In the Joe Rogan, Patrick Bet-David our debate yesterday, or not debate, podcast, they talked a lot about BlackRock, and it gave me a perspective that I never even had before, because everyone, talking about BlackRock now with the Bitcoin thing, more rich people, right? Hold on. BlackRock is not exactly just more rich people, right? What I found out is the amount of assets. I knew that they had 10 trillion under management. I'd never really done the sizing or what that means, right? Basically, there are only two countries in the world with more AUM, two countries with more AUM than BlackRock. It's America and China, right? They're richer. There's more AUM that BlackRock has than Japan as a country and an economy. Japan, right? So this is not just a rich hedge fund with some Wall Street people. If you look at Citadel, Vanguard, and BlackRock, it's 90% of the world. And now that they're in, what they're saying is, whatever's going on in this system, it's got to change. It's got to be different, right? So they're embracing Bitcoin. You had yesterday on Fox News, right? Another one of these low IQ platforms, but starting to wake up. They said Bitcoin is a valuable global digital asset that has a long future ahead of it, right? So people yesterday talking about that. And then you had Coinbase. Now, I know a lot of you are fans of Coinbase. I've met Brian before, right? Brian Armstrong. I've hung out with him. Really nice guy. I mean, one of the most sincere, I think, people in the game. Now, a million problems with him as well, right? I think he spent way too much time believing Democrats were going to give him a fair shake. Probably naive in a lot of ways. Totally appreciate Jack Dorsey kind of trolling him about doing more Lightning stuff and getting more into Bitcoin and all of those things, right? But as someone who worked at an exchange, I can still respect what he's got to negotiate and deal with, and I don't try to mind read him too much. But it turns out, despite all this trouble, they published some of their financials yesterday. Healthy as hell. They're doing great, right? So Coinbase, I think, opening their eyes to the corruption of the system, and have suffered more than any company in the Bitcoin space in America anyway. Well, Kraken maybe. I mean, it's a toss up between Kraken and them, but nevertheless, they've been really mistreated. I mean, really mistreated. And I can imagine these people starting to become more engaged. And if Coinbase, for example, leaves America, it's going to be a major wake-up call, right? A major wake-up call. A big change could come from that. So I don't see Coinbase on the side of the broken brain people. I don't see them building more fragile systems and preying off fragile, weak minds, right? I think they'll be eventually fully aligned with Bitcoiners that want to completely separate money and state, and will be there in the end on the side of the good, I think. So you don't need to put it in good and bad, right? It's change. And so in the end, because this financial system has so much entropy, it has created a really weak system. And that weak system is propagated by all of these weak minds. And in the end, you can really get a sense of how the credentialism and all of these things became so important to the mythology, right? And that's why everyone's talking about this article today. And I think we mentioned it briefly yesterday, and I think it's going to become more important going forward. It's in the New York Times. It's David Brooks asking, what if we're the bad guys here? And more people realizing that the credentialism, that all of these folks who, it's really that they like a guy like Obama, right? He came from the Harvard family. His family was the system, right? And in some ways, now I don't want to diminish his actual grandparents that raised him in Hawaii, and his father who left him when he was young. I'm sure they had whatever that book he wrote about, and his mom had some troubles too. But Obama really, and I'm happy for him, right? I think that schools do have a place for this, for broken families and all of that. And not everyone who goes and gets their identity at college did it so because they have a broken family or anything like that, right? And if you don't have a great family life, there's no shame in finding a type of family in another institution or another place, right? But the problem is that the one that they've joined wasn't that innocent in the end and did a lot of stuff unknowing, right? Maybe not intentional, but here we are. So you're getting a lot more things like this, right? David Brooks in the New York Times. What if we're the bad guys? What if the people who thought that because they have a degree and know about science that they couldn't get things wrong, they can get things wrong, right? Oh, and before we go, I'll read some of these quotes too. I wanted to mention the one Moscow time I forgot today because I had featured it lower. It's too good, right? So and this sort of incorporates everything I have to say today, right? The persuasive ability, who we're dealing with, who the enemy is, what we're up against, right? So they had Al Sharpton yesterday on MSNBC, right? And they're talking about the Trump thing, right? So Al Sharpton comes out and says, can you imagine if James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government? These are the people we're up against. It's a comedy. Could you imagine if Thomas Jefferson was a revolutionary? Could you imagine? What would we do? Imagine if George Washington was a revolutionary? What would we do? I mean, come on. There's no way we can lose to these brain dead morons. There's just no way. All right, let me get to some quotes here. Let's see what's happening. We got low quotes today. That's okay. That's okay. Was there a feed interruption anywhere? Has anyone noticed if it was on Rumble? All right, Tyler, what's up, my man? Now I done. I hate this. Nothing actually on it. Then yeah. Now I done. Oh, I missed that. Sorry, Tyler. FTX tip the scales for Biden. Of course, the propaganda machine will back him. Absolutely. Yeah. Never trusted Barr. No way. No how. It's good to see Coinbase doing well. Crypto and Bitcoin needs them. Indeed. It does need them. All right, team. I don't have too much more today. I know Atlantis is real, my man. I'm a big Atlantis is real guy. Don't worry. We're trying to get more Atlantis content onto the show. We're big Atlantis fans, my man. Big Atlantis fans. All right. Well, that's all I got for today, team. Let me see. Try and get a couple more comments. No, that's all I got. All right, team. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. I'm heading to Vermont today. I hope you have a great day. And peace, everyone. Cool.